Okay. Hi.
Hi.
So I'm very excited to have our discussion today. So we are getting together to talk about what it takes to have connected, extraordinary partnerships in our lives. So this is great.
Yes.
Yeah. So maybe we can start by talking about what are some of the issues that you come across, in the couples that you work with and with individuals that are struggling in this area.
Yeah. I think this is a really fun topic for us to explore together about sort of what are those ingredients that it takes to make relationships really feel rich and satisfying. And we know there's lots of research that shows that no matter who we are or what we achieve in our lives, the most important aspect of our lives are those relationships, especially intimate relationships, right? We know that quality of intimate relationship ends up sort of counting more towards our relationship satisfaction than even things like health and income and career success. So it's kind of I think we make a lot of assumptions that we can just lock in and enjoy our intimate relationships without putting in the work. And It isn't that way, is it?
I often say that really the quality of our lives is determined by the quality of our relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And what I often tell people is that it starts first with your relationship with yourself. That's the building block to your relationships with everybody else. And people often don't think about that. They don't think about having a relationship with themselves. It's almost like they just automatically think what they think and never question what they think about themselves.
Yes. Well, and I think maybe back in the day, historically, we didn't expect the same kinds of things from our relationships that we do today. We've created some high bars for ourselves. I think all for the better. I think what we ask, that kind of fellow traveler idea that we're learning and growing together, is beautiful. It's a really great thing to expect more than just, living under the same roof, but to really expect a relationship where we don't just survive together, we thrive together. I think it's great that we're expecting that from ourselves and each other. But I agree 100% that, okay, so if we want that, are we willing to also put in the hard work on ourselves and understanding who we are, like sort of the map of our internal world, where our tender spots are, where our unresolved hurts are, and do that kind of work so that we can show up and create something that feels really rich and satisfying.
That's right. That's right. Because I think that whether you're talking about your relationship with yourself or you're talking about your relationship with your partner, I think a lot of people don't realize that it takes daily work, right? It's like if you want to be in shape, you gotta put the work in. And people often think that relationships should just happen, that love is just a feeling and it doesn't take cultivating or practice. And I think that there's not enough discussion and education about the specific practices, the daily practices that you need to engage in order to have a successful relationship.
I don't know if you find this, but I find this with I teach college students and graduate students. I find it when I talk to them about this, but also with my couples as well, almost like a resistance, that the idea of the work that goes into an intimate relationship feels kind of antithetical to like the storybook idea or the fairy tale idea, that somehow like, ooh, if it's work, if we have to schedule dates and make time for our sexual practice with each other, somehow that means we're not meant to be, we're doomed. Like, it's not this easy breezy romantic notion.
Yes.
I think that ends up being a barrier right there.
Absolutely. Right. And then, I think that idea also is perpetuated a little bit in our culture, right? Yeah. Where nobody's really talking about, what it really looks like on a daily basis to cultivate that kind of relationship, or what it looks like on a daily basis to connect. It should just happen, and that's not the case, particularly when you lead busy lives and people are working, taking care of kids, and, you know, our lives are busier than ever now. And it really takes consciously devoting practices in place to create an extraordinary relationship. And having, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to echo what you were saying about the busyness. I know that research is showing that Americans are working more hours than they did certainly a generation ago. So we're putting hours in, and then you add to that just that we could always, you know, take this guy and just dive into whatever distractions are there. And we can be maybe in the same space, but in really two different worlds, because I'm on my Facebook feed and you're on your Netflix, and there's always stuff that can take us not just outside of ourselves, distracted from ourselves, but really distracted from the people who are like right here next to us.
Absolutely. So this is something that I find, and this is whether I'm working with individuals or couples. People want to avoid inner pain at all costs, right? And so, and as you said, the phone and, you know, sort of going on Facebook or whatever it is that we do to distract ourselves from sort of that inner disturbance can cause problems later, right? That most people want to just not deal with the more, you know, those deeper vulnerabilities. But what I try to teach people, and I'm sure you do this too in your practice, is if you turn towards those deeper vulnerabilities, if you understand what's really triggering you in your relationships, you're able to get more familiar with when you're being triggered into those deeper issues, right? I mean, I often see in my practice, I mean, people come in and they are fighting over, you know, things that really don't seem to be that big of a deal, but they've caused huge rifts in the relationship because what's really happened is people are being triggered into feeling unloved or not important or not valued or not cared about, but they're arguing over, you know, that somebody ate the last chocolate donut.
That's right. That's right. That is, boy, is that a shift, isn't it? When we can support a couple shifting from that place of coming in with the finger pointing, right? Where I think oftentimes it is with a couple, each partner wants to kind of pull me as a therapist over to their side and say, let's look together at how messed up she is. No. Come over here and let's look together at how messed up she is. It's sort of a battle for who did the worst thing. And it's so powerful when we can change that dance, that finger pointing and who did the worst thing, and start to look at, okay, so there's the thing you did, like legit, you shouldn't have eaten the donut. Yeah. But what else? Like, and like what's missing, what's left out, what triggered you about that, and start to peel back that onion is so rich. And in that way, an intimate relationship, or frankly, a parent-child relationship, becomes the most potent crucible for personal transformation that we will ever have.
Yes.
Ever.
I mean, that's the thing. Our intimate relationships are our greatest spiritual teachers, really. I mean, they teach us most about ourselves. But that you just brought up something that's so important, and that is that rather than looking outward, right, pointing the finger at somebody else, you are making me feel like I'm not important. You are making me feel like I'm not valued. It's turning the finger towards ourselves, right? And really taking ownership for our own triggers. But if we don't see what our deeper triggers are, we're not able to take ownership of them.
Well, that's right. And we just constantly feel like a victim of the external world.
Yes.
Yeah. So I am just finishing up this book that will get published in a few months, called Loving Bravely. And a big chunk of the book, it sort of is the thread that holds the book together, is the idea of moving through our intimate relationships with this kind of name, connect, choose process. Like, so 1, 2, 3. And the first thing is naming it, just naming, ooh, dang, I'm triggered right now. And that naming process of I feel X is the first step toward what you're describing, that kind of deeper dive, curious questioning, what's going on inside of me. And it may end up that I need to talk to you about expectations or boundaries or truthfulness. There may be a relational piece of what needs to get done.
Yes.
But there's always a piece that's about my relationship with me. What's going on in my world?
Absolutely. Yep.
Being awakened by you.
Being awakened to it. That's right. So I actually lead workshops virtually called Dethroning Your Inner Critic, which is exactly what this is about, is recognizing this voice in your mind, right? And that we think is us, that's telling us, oh, you should feel really unloved here. You should feel really unimportant. You should feel really disrespected. You should feel really disregarded. And it is so amazing to me how this voice plays such a pivotal role really in all of our relationships with our spouses, our partners, our children, our friends, our parents, our in-laws. I mean, it really sort of, it's really responsible for wreaking havoc in a lot of the relationships. So I love doing that work as well in helping people identify the difference between their authentic selves and that inner critic voice that they're listening to, right? And
I love the idea when you bring a community together to do this work together. I think that must supercharge the work, because when we find that tribe or that community where we can be vulnerable and share our story, and I think that's just so beautiful, because without that, in the absence of that, that critic feels like truth, right? It feels like truth.
Absolutely. And no one talks about this. And then the other issue is that we've got a culture that's obsessed with social media, and everybody's posting on their social media how fabulous their marriage is and how wonderful their children are. And listen, rightly so, nobody's saying, I just got into a fight with my 15-year-old, son right before he left for school, but it's happening, but nobody's seeing it. And then they're comparing themselves to this idealized version of life. And so it's almost like it's getting worse, not better.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think that you and I, the two of us, are out there in the world, like really trying to create an education for people that more so than ever is so incredibly important, because I think that we are a culture that is, more dissatisfied than ever with life and with our relationships. So, I love the work that we're both bringing out into the world. I think it's amazing. So this has been wonderful. And I hope that we're going to continue to have these conversations. I think our next conversation is going to be about actually how to deal with an affair. So looking forward to that. Yes. All right.
Okay. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Bye.